Hello, everyone. I think it's time to cover something that I don't put a lot of emphasis on, but many people in the planted aquarium world do, and that's carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is the carbon source for basically all plants that are making new building blocks for their cells and need carbon to do that. So they have to use it from largely, almost entirely, carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is not as readily available underwater as it is up in the atmosphere. So plants that are underwater are having a little bit more of a challenging time getting the availability of that CO2 for the most part. And that's especially true for people who are running traditional tanks that have like a gravel substrate or sand you know what I'm talking about, substrate stuff on the bottom of the aquarium. So anyway, back over here. This is a do-it-yourself carbon dioxide rig, and the way it works is we're going to put citric acid powder and water in one of these tanks, baking soda and water in another, and then hooking them up to a CO2 line. Now, for this one, I actually haven't been running it lately, but anyway, CO2 line goes down there, hangs out by my litter box down under there for the cats, and it comes up here into a bubbler. This is how you meter how fast you want the CO2 coming out. So there's going to be a knob on the other end I'll show you, and you basically set number of bubbles coming out of that per unit time, like 4 or 6 bubbles a second, something like that. I've also got a check valve, an on-off valve. This just turns one way and the other to this is how I like turn it off and on at night. That's the on position. This is the off position. The check valve prevents, actually there are 2 check valves, one here and one here. One of them, both aren't necessary. One of them is a really good idea. That prevents water from coming backwards and doing things like sucking the water out of your bubble counter and things. Down here is a glass CO2 diffuser. When this is running, carbon dioxide bubbles will be coming out. Now this one is old. It's just about ready for the trash can. You can see there's algae growing in it, and it still works, but it's time for me to replace it. And I will be doing that at some point. But CO2 really isn't something that I mess with all that much any longer because most of my tanks have dirt substrate, and deep substrate dirt tanks generate their own CO2. Not quite as high as something like this will do. This will absolutely supersaturate the water with CO2 if you allow it to. One trick is to find a way to you're going to be using a valve like this, an on-off valve, kind of a needle valve, and sorry for that, but well, this one's closed super tight. No, it's open all the way. Anyway, whatever. As you screw it tight, it turns it off. As you open it up a little bit, you're allowing bubbles to, this is going to be pressurized gas, so bubbles will be bleeding up out of this through here. Got another set up here, and essentially we've got weighed out reagents, and we just dump them in here. So dump, 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 dump. Normally I like doing the citric acid before the baking soda, but we're doing it a little backwards today. And usually it takes about a full cup of this thing, so that's a little bit heavy on my scale, so I'll drop a little bit, see how it goes. Still a little bit heavy. Don't have to be super accurate on this. It's not a life or death situation. We're just making carbon dioxide gas, but I'll still get it pretty close. That's bam. Okay, so moving this over to here now, dumping in all this, and I weighed those out to 200 grams each. 200 grams of citric acid is going to go in 600 milliliters of water in the first tank, this one here. 200 grams of baking soda and 200 milliliters of water are going into the other. So on mine, what I've done, I come through and mark lines. So I'll actually take a measuring cup or whatever, fill it with, in this case, 200 milliliters, pour it in, see where the water level is, take a Sharpie and mark it. Over here, the lines are a little higher at 600 milliliters. But I did the same thing. My measuring cup wasn't big enough for 600, so I did whatever, 200 3 times, and came over, put a couple of lines on here. And I think on a lot of these I even write baking soda, and over here somewhere it's rubbed off a long time ago, but citric acid. And these days I just know the one with the higher level is always citric acid, the one with the lower level is always baking soda, whatever. So I used to rotate these out pretty frequently and try to keep them going all the time. So while I'm here, maybe doing this one-handed, I won't spill anything, but I'm just going to fill this up to about that 600 mark in the first one. And the reason I'm showing you this is because there's actually a method that you need to employ when you first get this stuff going and start your reaction up, or it won't work very well. And specifically, that's what I'm trying to show you guys. And this method is really great for anybody who is kind of mid-range in their hobby, wants to get better, likes plants. Maybe your plants aren't growing as fast as you want them to. You want to rush that process along. Hey, that's cool. I'm not going to hate on you. I like rushing stuff too. So that's why I do this. And gosh darn. Okay, I guess I'll have to take these over to the other rig. I was going to set them up a bit closer, but I'll take them to the place where I don't use CO2 anymore and show you what happens here. So one of these, the one with the big ball, goes down in the citric acid thing. This tank is also going to have a gauge on top. No big deal, sorry. And then simply spin the thing on. Works a lot better when you have two hands, whatever. The other one, no big surprise here, going down in this thing. And once we get this set up, the concept is basically we're going to squeeze the citric acid bottle and push some of that stuff through this hose, through there, down into here. When the citric acid and water hit the baking soda, they're going to get fizzy. That's carbon dioxide. That's what we want. Simple as that. So I'm going to try a little harder to tighten these one-handed, and then one other further explanation before I get started. Because these are linked, we'll be blowing stuff from this tank into this one. This tank will get high pressure in it, and then it's going to equalize its pressure and blow the high pressure back into this one. So then that high pressure is further giving more power to push this stuff back over to there. And then the excess stuff is going to come out. This is just the same kind of setup as I showed you on the other thing. It's got a valve here that's for the amount. It's got a valve here that's just on and off. So this will shut it off altogether or open it altogether. I don't run this setup because I've got a leak. This is 4 tanks linked together, and I have a leak, a CO2 leak somewhere like in that area that I just haven't fixed because all 4 of these tanks are deep substrate. I don't have to run CO2 in them. Here's an example. That's a CO2 drop checker, and no CO2 been in here a long time, and the drop checker fluid was changed I don't know, a week or so back, and it stays kind of that greenish color, so whatever. It doesn't have to be going. But watch this. When I squeeze this sufficiently, I can't do it, dang it. One-handed isn't quite strong enough. Oh, I skipped a step. Look at this. I've got to swirl all the citric acid until it is all up in the solution. I almost goofed. So shake this up so you don't see just a big pile of citric acid in the bottom there. Now this one over here doesn't matter as much. There's baking soda in there, but we don't care nearly as much about that. give it a little shake, make sure it's not, there's some up in there, but some of this is going to stay down on the bottom, in other words, precipitated out of the aqueous solution. But this one, we're going to shake, 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 shake. And I did this with cooler water that had been sitting out on my desk for a while, so it's going to take a little longer than normal. But once we get that totally shooken up, and I'm just going to do this for a demo, we're going to squeeze and spray that stuff, and boom, there we go. We're making CO2 over here. It's pressurizing this, and now it's giving it kind of a spring-loaded pressure behind this bottle that goes back into that one. So if I give it another squeeze, some more stuff came out of that one. Bubble, 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 back into this one. And this will begin rising. Pressure's going to start rising. It's not really going to do much until it gets up into this. This is representing, probably represents, kg/cm squared, but roughly just think of this as like it needs to get up to double atmospheric pressure. So somewhere between this 1 and 2, it's really going to be in the sweet range. That usually takes overnight. So when I'm doing this, I normally set it up in the evening, give it a few squeezes, push some citric acid over into that other side. All the valves are going to be open, and I just walk away from it. I might come back a little later, shake it again, make sure everything's good. If the pressure doesn't come up after an overnight session, if you don't see it over like the 1, give it another squeeze. Physically push some more of this in there. And you can even grab this guy over here, shake it a little bit, and that, spurs some more reaction. So this will be rising in pressure over the course of the next 12 to 48 hours or so, and kind of get in the sweet zone. And depending on how many tanks you're running, what the volume of water might be, this, for a 55-gallon tank, for me running like 4 to 6 bubbles per second, it'll go a week or more. So it's a pretty simple solution. It's pretty inexpensive. I think one of these rigs on Amazon or eBay can cost about $20, maybe less. It will cost 2-liter sodas because you need their bottles. You will need at least one check valve. Let me see if I've got one in visible range down here. No. But like I was showing you over here, a check valve, at least one. This is 2, but at least one. A CO2 bubble counter, and a diffuser. You also need some airline. Now here's the thing about airline and CO2 airlines. People will say that regular aquarium tubing is permeable to CO2 gas, and that's true. But the pressure that you have to run at to really have any significant loss from there is really high. It's actually higher than the pressure we're going to be running at, significantly higher, like up to 50 psi or something. And that's just when it starts to have a little bit of permeability. So don't really worry about that. If you can get access to let me try to show you this black line here. This is CO2 line. That's better, but you don't have to have it. This was a separate line, but yeah, the black stuff, that's good for CO2. And after just a little while, this pressure is going to be creeping up, and you can give it some squeezes, but the more initial squeezes you give it, I seem to notice it's easy to speed it up a little too much, and then the reaction kind of goes a little too quickly, and your batch might not last a full week or however many days that you want it to go. But that's okay, because this stuff's dirt cheap: citric acid and baking soda and water, and you get CO2. So for anyone who's starting out, wants some experience with CO2, that's a great way to do it. Try that out, give it a shot. You'll probably enjoy it. It may make you want to go buy some, big rig CO2 stuff that's automated. With a system like this, you do have to turn it off manually, like this. Turn that to the off position about an hour before lights out, and you're welcome to turn it back on about an hour before lights on. Anyway, I hope that was beneficial to somebody. If you like it, give me a like, subscribe, shout out. Welcome to leave some comments, and I will catch you later.